Hello, ladies and gentlemen. It's Modern Investing on Pod TV. My name is Sasha Star, and today guest we have Dr. Milan Sambarak. Welcome to the show, Milan.
Thank you for inviting me, Sasha. I hope I can say something useful.
Absolutely. And we have online producer Mark Lee. You're welcome to participate in the show as well. And we'll see if anybody else will join us. So in the meantime, there are a lot of things happening lately in the politics and in the investing, and they are connected, believe it or not. So I've personally came to the conclusion that in a current environment, long positions can be brutal because the market is going down lately. I've reconstructed my fund portfolio. I was able to sell my NVIDIA shares at $132 and have no regrets about that. And so I raised cash. And I'm looking at some other areas to invest. I'm looking at some stocks like Lululemon. I'm looking at Goldman Sachs. It's been beaten down recently, but I think it's trying to recover, but we'll see. Some other areas like Biogen stock in completely different area of investing. And Milan, how you're faring these days?
Now, what you're talking about here, Sasha, for yourself is for your fund portfolio, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Now here's the scoop. The historical price earnings ratio of the New York Stock Exchange, the historical price earning ratio of the market as represented by an exchange traded fund which tracks the S&P 500, the historical price earning ratio is 18.65. Right now it stands at 29.25. The market is hugely overpriced, and it's going to tank one of these days. Now, Trump is pro-business, and that's probably part of the reason why the market is so high. But the decline is inevitable. And as I mentioned in a previous show, Goldman Sachs and the Bank of America are predicting that our investments will give us a 0% to 1% return for a decade. And we're facing that. So we have to prepare for that. And so the best way to prepare for that, what my wife and I do, and by the way, my wife and I, we always encourage people to have both spouses involved in investing, because what typically happens is the man passes before the wife does. Most commonly, the man looks after the investment. So not only does a widow have to deal with the trauma of a past husband, but also she doesn't know anything about investing. So we constantly suggest, when I talk to people about how to invest and what to do, have both spouses involved. So now, David Swensen, who ran the Yale endowment program, the most successful on the planet, said that the best thing to do is to have an asset allocation of roughly 50-50, say 50% in the American market and 50% in cash or near cash. And 60-40 is also good, and 55-45, 45-55. Any of those work as long as you have a lot of cash available pretty well all the time. So now, Wall Street doesn't want you to have any cash because they don't make any money on your cash. So they do everything to discourage you from having cash. But let's say you have a 50-50 asset allocation, which is what my wife and I have. When the market rises and you wind up having more in the market than in cash, you take profits to rebalance it back to 50-50. When the market drops and you have more cash than the market, then you buy bargains. So by having a 50-50 asset allocation or any asset allocation where you have a lot of cash most of the time, you're constantly buying bargains and taking profits. The exact opposite of what most investors do. What most investors do is when the market is rising and it is expensive, they jump on board. The kind of a person who would look at the flyers and go to a supermarket to save 5 cents on a loaf of bread while spending 6 cents for gasoline, that kind of a person is jumping on board when the market is high. We, with a 50-50 asset allocation, are taking profits. When the market tanks, regularly it does, most people are running for the doors when bargains are available. But if you have a 50-50 asset allocation, as recommended by David Svensson, then you're always taking profits and always buying bargains. It can't be any other way. So that's what my wife and I do. Yeah.
I had a quick question for both you and Sasha and everything, because generally speaking, if you look at the American market, the U.S. market, there are certain industries that have historically been popular. Way back in the day, like in the Westerns, there was that whole notion of the railroads, and then the automobile industry became very popular. And now there was the dot-com bubble, which I know Jim has talked about before and everything, and now the AI bubble and everything. But in watching the speech yesterday, it looks like President Trump is trying to bring back an old industry. So I was wondering, for those that are interested in investment, are there any shipping companies that they should be looking at? Because he said that he was going to bring back American shipping. That's literally what he said and everything. So I just wondered, is this something that folks would possibly look at investing in if they're interested in investment? And if so, what shipping companies would they look at? I'm not in that space, so you two are experts. So I'll wait to hear y'all's answers and everything. So
my response to that is that if you hold in your core portfolio 50-50 asset allocation with 50% in an exchange traded fund which tracks the S&P 500, and SPY happens to be the best one, you will also hold a shipping company or all the shipping companies that are there. So you don't need to worry about that. Picking individual stocks or individual industries works occasionally, but not always. Whereas rebalancing your asset allocation always works. You know, there is rules-based investing and judgment-based investing, as I often mention. Rules are always correct. Judgment, not always correct. So, yeah, I would own the shipping companies through owning S&P 500 by having SPY, which is the best exchange-traded fund that tracks the S&P 500. There are about half a dozen funds which track the S&P 500, but SPY happens to be the best one because it's the largest, the most liquid, has the smallest price cost ratio. And so that's how I would own the shipping companies. What would you do, Sasha?
I'm not an expert in this segment of the market. I've just one company that particularly interested me is in shipbuilding company. It's VMAR. It's Vision Marine Technologies. It's just one of the samples. There are some other companies. It's so far it's closing down. It's moving down rather than up. So I think, look, from intention to the real profitability, it's a long way to go. I don't think that it will happen overnight, and I wouldn't rush with this investment. But to put it on your radar and just see if anything useful may transpire out of it, yeah, it's quite possible. But I wouldn't buy it myself, and I wouldn't recommend it to anybody. But there are a few other shipbuilding stocks available. So it's really a matter of to convince yourself that that's a way to go. The problem is that if stock is moving down, even if eventually it will move up, but for a while you are playing with the dead money. Your money is lying there. Most likely you will lose a portion of it and hope for the best. But that's you can use any other stocks. Today, there is, for example, even if you take Nvidia, it will eventually move higher. The problem is for how long it's for trading today at 117 or so. It may recover. It may go higher to 120, 20-ish. It could go
Sasha,
down to $100 a share. So I wouldn't recommend even Nvidia to buy today. In fact, I don't recommend anything to buy today.
yeah,
I
exactly. I was going to ask you about that. Now, you accept the fact that the market one of these days will decline significantly. You accept that, right?
sorry, what it is you
You
said?
accept the fact that one of these days, we don't know when, but one of these days, the market will decline significantly. To bring it
Yeah,
back to its, yeah,
it's
okay.
already happening, but it's just the beginning. I
And
looked
so,
at the charts, Milan. I looked at the charts very carefully. Forget about the Trump factor and many other things.
okay,
Themselves suggest that that could be, first of all, the recession is looming most likely. Second of all, with tariffs, wars, and so on, there could be a situation when all Europe could impose sanctions on US. Canada and China already doing that.
yeah,
Tesla is stopping its operation in Canada, and in UK, all this. Cybertrucks, Tesla, they're all out. Chinese companies, electric companies, like EV companies, already approaching Canada with intention to build and sell their electric cars in Canada. And they have some amazing electric cars. I don't suggest that they're necessarily better than Tesla, not at all. But if they're 50% cheaper than Tesla,
yeah.
then the value is definitely there. So it's a bid, it's a NIO, there are a bunch of Chinese companies, and the
Well,
same thing is happening in Europe. It's a few weeks ago, Germany, Volkswagen, offering China all its capacity to build electric cars in Germany, and this is now is being discussed. So essentially, in my opinion, all what US is doing, they are muscles themselves out of the world markets. And even if they will concentrate on North America, there is not much business for them in Mexico or Canada at all. So this is one of the reasons why I think that overall stock market has only one direction from now on.
yeah,
It's
true.
down.
Okay, talking
But
about shift.
Milan, one more thing. It's not just because the stock market is overpriced. It could be the case for that, but before Trump, it was also overpriced. But it
Yes,
was
it was.
continually rising. And if it wouldn't be the stupid tariff wars and so on, it could continue to go hard because
Yeah.
earnings are really good. Okay, so there would have been some adjustment on price earnings. Because if you say it's 28 now, but if earnings are climbing, so it could go down to 25, maybe to 22, or so on, if the earnings are climbing down. Now, the problem is now that the earnings will suffer because of the tariffs war. So
Well, not
then,
only that, but the historical price earnings ratio is a little over 16. We're a long way from 16. Yeah. But now, talking about shipping, I live in Collingwood, which used to be a shipbuilding town.
yeah, yeah,
And it couldn't compete with the South Koreans because the people here were making $40 an hour. In South Korea, they were building ships for $40 a week or maybe a month. I don't know. So the shipyard closed, and it was the largest employer here, and we considered that a tragedy. And the mayor formed a committee to see how we're going to deal with these people, and he put me on that committee. And the what we were looking at is there was a significant number of people who were close enough to retiring to be able to retire. And there was another group of people who were young enough to retrain. So they got retrained. And there was a very small group who were neither old enough to retire nor young enough to retrain. So they suffered. And so through various government support programs, they survived. And so shipping then closed here in Collingwood. And now there are fish in the water. There weren't any when the shipyard was there. And there are beavers in the water. There weren't any when the shipyard was there. And there's an island about 12 miles or so away from Collingwood. You couldn't see it when the shipyard was operating because of the pollution they were generating. Now you can see it. We as a community are better off because the shipyard closed. And that will be true of all manufacturing. People who are into manufacturing of any sort, they hate their work. They hate Mondays. They love Fridays. And so we should get away from manufacturing as much as possible and go into innovation, which we are good at. And we can replace manufacturing with innovation because the people who are involved in innovation are at it 24/7 voluntarily because they enjoy what they do. And if you like what you're doing, it's not really work. So that's my comment on shipyards, on shipping. You own it by owning SPY, and you don't need any other way to own it.
Yeah, I agree with you. I'm not too enthusiastic about many Trump's initiatives, including this one. And it's a nice presentation to global public to say, oh, we're going to do ships and we're going to do so many ships and so on. As the commercial fleet, like cruise ships or so on, it's all building in Europe. It's in Finland, and many other countries. Italy,
Ireland builds commercial.
Ireland, yeah. So I don't think that U.S. will be successfully will enter in this market. And as the military shipbuilding, they're not producing any meaningful profits for U.S. because, of course, now with the new policies, they will nickel and dime all producers of even military ships. And I don't know when the last military ship was ever built. Maybe some nuclear carriers. Okay, so how many more nuclear carriers U.S. needs? Another 10, another 20, 100? What's the use of them? There is a new technology available. They can sink any the nuclear carriers in a matter of seconds. So I really don't understand that. And same as initiative for rare earth minerals that Ukraine supposedly has. Come on, what a joke. I don't know if this deal will be signed. Zelensky yesterday made a statement that he is ready to sign. Okay, fine. So he will sign it. What that means, there will be in the next 5 to 10 years, there will be not a single American on the ground to develop these minerals. Because you have to, first of all these maps, they were done by Soviet geologists in the 50s. You can only imagine how good are these maps. So you have to, first of all, review these maps, create new ones. You have to do samplings. You have to develop technology, how to actually get these minerals from the ground. So you have to develop technology. Then you have to, once that's done and everything is working, you have to do feasibility study as to combine all that with the financial considerations, how profitable it's going to be at the end of the day. And if that feasibility study is successful, considering that all world market for these minerals is $11 billion a year, 80% of which belongs to China. So China is one who does have expertise in this field. So Ukraine, if it's just commercial consideration, they should work with China to develop its resources, not with the US. However, the political consideration, we'll see, maybe they will sign it. But the significance of that for the US is really minuscule.
Sasha, since we're talking here about investing, and we agree with Goldman Sachs and the Bank of America that we're facing a major market decline so that it approaches its historical price earnings ratio of a little over 16. Investors in the market are going to take a beating. So, are there any other avenues of investing which could replace stock market investing? So, could people take one of their hobbies? It might be stamp collecting, for example. It might be violin playing. It might be coin collecting. Any one of their hobbies, and capitalize on that by investing in that. If it's an area which they're familiar with, they're an expert in it, and the prospects of any one of those appreciating while the market returns 0% to 1% for a decade, very difficult to make a living doing that. Can investing in stamps, for example, if you're an expert, could you invest profitably there? Could you? I know you could in violins. I'm a violin player, and I've seen a lot of my friends in various major orchestras use their violins as part of their pension plan. They could acquire major Cremona Italian-made violin 30, 40 years ago when they started their career for the price of a Toronto house. And today, those violins are selling for the price of 3 Toronto houses, and Toronto houses have appreciated as well. So they're going to do all right by having that violin. But can people invest in one of their hobbies and profit there while the market gives us a 0% to 1% return for a decade?
Yes, Milan, of course. I have proposition for you. I have a violin and a bow with a case in very good condition. I can sell it to you just for $15,000. And in time, it could appreciate and be sold for $100,000. So, yeah, it's possible.
You have such a violin, Sasha?
Yes, I do.
Well, I'd love to see. Do you know the name of the maker?
It's an old Austrian master of the 19th century. I have to look up.
Yes.
Haven't done it, but yeah, there are possibilities. Again, you have to be expert in that field.
You absolutely. Yeah.
It's a long-term proposition. They're talking
Yeah.
about
That too is true. Yeah.
maybe even 20 years.
The major problem that some of these people have, the violinists who are selling their violins at huge markups, a huge increases in value, is how to avoid the tax man. So they go to Saudi Arabia to see if they can find somebody who will pay them for the violin in cash. Somebody who doesn't play the violin but wants to have it because it's a name. Yeah.
Emil, with all due respect, I think this is the theme for a new show: how to make money by selling violins. I think that new show could be quite popular because for investing for our purposes, it's not a proposition at all. Remember, if the market, as you say, in 10 years will have zero returns, it doesn't mean that the market, which is there with S&P, whatever it's called, 575, so it will remain stable and will not move for 10 years. That's not going to happen. It will fluctuate, and the fluctuations could be quite substantial because there are always opportunities to make money, whether the market moving up or down. So this is something what we have to concentrate on and leave violence to somebody else. Yes, Mark.
Yeah, you mentioned that hobby and the hobbies that can be turned into money. And there's a hobby that's a major hobby that I know one of the countries that you love dearly and has been involved in a horrible war and everything. They've actually turned their hobby into a profitable business, because I know a number of people, including some here where I live at in North Carolina, that used to make money off of drone technology, and they would fly commercial drone flights and sometimes even do event drone photography and everything like that. But as both you and Ivan have reported, there are a number of people that have used that drone technology in order to take the war to the Russians and everything like that. So that's one of those cases of a hobby that actually became a profitable hobby, because they have definitely used that drone technology to help the situation.
And it's not just drones, it's many other weapons that Ukraine is becoming the leading
Right.
weapon producing countries in the world. And right now, there is a discussion about creating a new coalition of countries where Ukraine will be number one.
Mm.
There will be also French, UK, Scandinavian countries, Poland, Baltic states, maybe a few other, maybe Czech Republic, but those only those countries who are willing to work together to protect themselves from further Russian invasions. And Ukraine is a country number one, which has a number one army in the Europe and the great experience of actually fighting Russians and prevailing. Because today Russians were stopped, they make no progress in the firing line. They're trying to get ahead at colossal losses of lives, and they cannot do
Terrible. It is terrible. 5,000 people a day are dying over there in Ukraine and Russia.
Yeah.
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 5,000 a day. And so, the reason why Americans got out of Vietnam is because very few Americans wanted to be in Vietnam.
Right.
And there were no Vietnamese who didn't want them out of there. So the same situation now exists there in Ukraine and Russia. There are very few Russians, soldiers, who want to be fighting in Ukraine. 0%. And every Ukrainian wants them out of there. So that is what will drive them out of there ultimately. And the fact
Yeah.
that they can manufacture their own weapons, that's a big plus for them. Yeah.
I agree. And I think Trump, with this rare earth minerals, he's trying to muscle himself into the negotiating table to extract some goods for himself or United States or both. It's nothing there about a peace in Ukraine. If you look at this deal, there is nothing about even ceasefire, never mind stopping the war, even ceasefire. Why Trump wouldn't say, okay, let's do a ceasefire for 1 month. During this 1 month, we will discuss it thoroughly with Ukraine, with Russia, with other European countries, and how we can actually produce a long-lasting peace. If that would be his goal, sorry, I don't believe that is his real goal at all.
Here's a question for you, Sasha.
Yeah.
The Soviet Union was the biggest country in the world.
Yeah.
When it fell apart under Gorbachev, Russia remains the largest country in the world.
Yes.
Canada is second largest. Just because they occupy so much space on the globe, they gotta have pretty well everything. And if they haven't found the minerals, it's simply because they haven't looked hard enough. Everything that Trump wants probably exists in Canada, probably exists in Russia. All we have to do is find it. You agree with that?
No, because even if there are some deposits, commercially viable deposits, you need technology, you need money to really do the work. And neither Ukraine or Russia have both. So they cannot develop it. Now, even if United States, okay, the deal is signed, it will require 5 to 10 years to go through sampling, to develop technology, to do feasibility study, to do all the stages. It's next to impossible. Trump won't be even alive while first minerals will be produced. So this is, to me, but again, I have no problem with Ukrainians signing this deal. But this deal is not good for anybody. It's not good for United States or Ukraine.
I found very few Trump supporters. Trump got roughly a third of the voters supporting him. Kamala Harris got roughly a third, and a third did not even vote. And so Trump will probably need to be destroyed from within his own party. Many Republicans now, who used to be friends, are no longer friends. And if more of that happens, Trump is going to make every effort to stay in power forever, which which the Constitution doesn't allow. He'll change the Constitution. He'll ignore it. But there's so many Republicans now who are unhappy with him that he could be sidelined just because of his own party. Like Trudeau, for example, in Canada. People don't like him. He's going to lose the leadership position. I don't see much wrong with
Well,
Trudeau.
he resigned as a leader of Liberals, so there is a new election for Liberals. There will be a general election, but Trudeau is still quite popular in sense, especially late in his own tariffs and so on. I think, believe it or not, he is doing quite capable job by
Yeah.
finding the tariffs and so on. So I see nothing wrong. But he already resigned, so he's no longer a factor. In a few weeks, he will be irrelevant. So far,
I
he's capable
I
job.
I never understood why people were unhappy with Trudeau, and I fully understand why people are unhappy with Trump. Now he is pro-business, and that has probably helped the market.
You mean in case of Trump? He is pro-business when it concerns his friends like Elon Musk, J.D. Vance,
And himself.
yeah, and himself. I don't think he's really pro-business because business will make a lot of losses as a result of this tariffs cost.
Yeah, well, that's true. Economists,
Look,
sorry.
the damage is already done. Look at this.
Yeah,
For
yeah.
example, today, later on today, it's quite possible that he will say, okay, tariffs for Canada and Mexico are not going ahead because we got new understanding and Trudeau promised me this and that. But damage has been already done. If there is a boycott of all American products in Canada, it's coming up in United Kingdom, and there will be many countries in Europe who are not happy with this tariffs position. China will muscle its way even to Canada and some other countries offering electric cars and production and so on. So the damage is already done. It doesn't matter now what he's going to do. I'm not talking about even countermeasures by Canada and other countries. That's beside the point. Mark, yes.
Yeah, I just had a question about that because I mentioned it on the World Edition show earlier. Isn't he setting himself up for failure? Because one of the things that I mentioned on that news report was this notion that he wants to sell federal buildings. I think he withdrew that, but now there's talk that he may be putting that back out there again. And isn't that one of the complaints that people had about China and other countries? I think Russia was one of them, that they were buying up our property. So if you're selling the federal buildings, isn't that more property that the Chinese can buy?
You know that 1/3 of London, England, one of the most expensive cities on the planet, 1/3 is owned by Russians.
Yeah.
And it sounds like it would be something similar in Washington, D.C. and New York if he's going to sell all these federal buildings, because I know quite a few of them are in D.C. and Washington, D.C., and he had like a whole list of ones that he wanted to put up for sale and everything like that. Just coming back to music, and I had another question, and it was actually somewhat off the topic of politics just for a second, but coming back to investment. What is y'all's thoughts around investing in, for lack of a better term, what some people would call like lost items? Because I know some people even locally that used to harvest for copper. Like they would go to places that had copper that was just out there and find that copper in order to turn the copper into a financial windfall. And I even know that the Cultural Arts Center that I work at, that I mentioned to you a couple of times, Sasha, we used to have a pipe organ. That pipe organ can't be played in. It is now pipe organ parts. So at some point we may turn it into an artistic installation, or we may wind up selling some of those parts. So some of those parts are made up of silver, made up of, I don't think we got any gold parts, but they're made up of things that can be financially worthwhile.
Mark, but a lot of people are making a lot of money on eBay selling some stuff and some other. There are a lot of hustles around that you can make some money, but it has nothing to do with investing. Essentially, you are doing the job. You have to find wherever this copper is, separate it from the rest, collect it, deliver it, get your money. But it's a hustle. It's not investing.
Makes sense.
Yeah. Well, in this case, I think we covered a lot of ground today, and I thank you both, Mark and you, Milan, for participating in this show. And looking forward to see you next week, same place, same time, and have successful investing. Thank you very much. See you next week. Bye bye,
Guys,
everyone.
have a good day, and we'll have the chess recording later on this week, and of course, we'll have the Ukraine, Russia, China show on Friday at 11 o'clock. So we'll have sort of that discussion at that time. Hopefully, Ivan will be with us with his lovely videos, and I know Jonathan Lockwood will be there for sure.
Thank you very much, Mark.
No problem.
Bye, Milan. Bye bye.